First, we're listening to the Habs360 podcast featured on allhabs.net. I'm Chris G along with Peter and George, and we're now joined on the Habs360 hotline by Marc-Antoine Godin. He is the Montreal Canadiens beat reporter for La Presse newspaper and La Presse.ca, and occasionally we see him on intermissions on TSN Montreal. Thank you for joining us, Marc-Antoine.
My pleasure. How are you guys?
We're doing good. Thanks for joining us.
All right, no problem.
So Marc-Antoine, prior to the start of the season, the prediction that I made here on Habs360 was that the Canadiens would be lucky if they finished 8th place, and boy was I wrong. Were you expecting the Habs to have clinched a playoff spot with 8 games remaining in the season?
Well, certainly not. I mean, I was pretty much in the same boat as you were early on in the year. I think nobody expected such a turnaround for this team. They couldn't do any worse than they did last year, so there was some correction that was to be expected. But I think that it caught everybody by surprise. At this point, I would say, though, the way the team has been playing, how consistent it's been, it doesn't look as a surprise anymore because they quickly established their style of play, and the people that are watching them have gotten used to it also. So it doesn't look as a surprise at this point that they've kept on going. But of course, if we all go back to the preseason, to our predictions, well, we're pretty far off, and it's all to the credit not only of the players but also the coach Michel Therrien, who's been able to establish his system very quickly, much more quickly than other coaches that were handling new teams. I'm thinking of Kruger in Edmonton or Oates in Washington, even though Adam Oates finally put his boat in the right direction. But it right from the get-go with Montreal it's been a very successful season. And of course everybody says, well, the team is much healthier this year than it was last year with Gianta and Markov back, but I think we should not underestimate also the contribution of rookies Gallagher and Galchenyuk, because they're really the ones that are giving this team 3 solid defensive lines. It's not a team that's just one trick pony and one line that you count on to score. So that makes tons of difference, especially, and we'll see that in the playoffs too.
Hey, Marc-Antoine, this is George. If the Canadiens were to start the playoffs today, they would be facing the New York Islanders.
Yeah.
But there's also a possibility that they might finish 4th and face the Leafs. Which one of these playoff matchups do you think would be better for the Montreal Canadiens?
Oh, that would be the Islanders for sure. For sure. Partly because of I was mentioning depth, the fact that they've got 3 lines that can score. It's in terms of matchups, I think that the Islanders could be an easier team to contain that way. The Leafs also over the years have proven to be very tough opponent on the Habs. It's one of the few teams, maybe with Boston, that really tries to outmuscle the Habs with varied degrees of success. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that they, in a long playoff series, it could be. I'm sure that you would have to consider the Canadiens the favorite. But if they were to come out of such a playoff, it would certainly be with some bumps and bruises. So I would be tempted to go with the Islanders, but it's always careful what you wish for because you might get it. So it's a bit early to say who we hope that the Canadiens will face. As Max Pacioretty says very often these days, you got to beat the best to be the best. So I think that no matter who they face, that they're going to have that motto in mind when come playoff time.
Last Saturday against the Boston Bruins, we saw that Alexei Emelin went down and he is out for the rest of the season. What kind of impact do you think his absence will have to the Habs for the rest of the season and the playoff run?
Well, that all depends how long Rafael Diaz is going to be out. Because when you've got both of those guys out, it means a lot of minutes, not only on Markov and Subban, but also on a guy like Francis Bouillon. Probably some minutes that he was not accustomed to play. He was held more in a range of 17, 18 minutes a game so far, but he's being asked a lot more. Not only since Diaz went down, but also since Emelin went down, and you have to add to the mix the fact that you've got a sixth defenseman who's a rookie, and they're really careful with the way they handle Beaulieu. He's averaging somewhere around 16 minutes a night, so it's a lot. It's a lot that's being asked to the top four defensemen on this team. And you would hope that that Francis Bouillon was still considered a third pairing defenseman and not a number 4 defenseman. So that's why I'm saying that it will all depend on the date of return of Rafael Diaz. Because if you've got a Diaz that comes back that's able to fairly quickly regain his rhythm and his old form, you would have a guy that's able to play not only on the second wave of the power play, but also help out on the PK and log some important minutes 5-on-5. So the pieces would be falling more into place with Diaz back in the lineup. That being said, the Emelin is the only guy with some legitimate sandpaper in his game. So it's a notion. It's a part of the Canadiens' game that's affected, but the system in place on defense doesn't really rely on toughness, you could say on toughness on body checks. It's more like clearing the puck, getting it out of the zone quickly, and great positioning. So it doesn't matter if you're a big guy or a small guy. It's about clearing the puck quickly, and that's what the Habs have done very, very effectively so far this season. So it's nice to see that Emelin absence has not shown really so far since he went down, but it might come back to haunt them later on.
So this week, the Montreal Canadiens announced a contract extension to Peter Budaj, 2-year contract at $1.4 million. I have a two-part question for you, Marc-Antoine. First part is your thoughts on specifically that contract extension, and number two, this whole new philosophy of the Canadiens re-signing players during the contract. Do you think has it had an impact in the dressing room in general as a whole?
Well, I think, let's start with the second part. I think that this is I've never understood Bob Gainey's philosophy of saying we're not going to negotiate contracts during the season. The philosophy behind that was to say, listen, if we re-sign a guy during the season and there's another one who's a UFA to be, and he's not re-signed, or he realizes that maybe the talks are not as advanced as they might be with other players, there'll be some there might be some jealousy, some division within the room. This year, I don't know if it's just because of the makeup of the team, the fact there are so few UFAs that are not so few players are going to be free agents at the end of the season. Maybe that Marc Bergevin considered that it was not a year where the chemistry of the team could be affected by such a thing, but who knows? But personally, I think it's very good because it's a team that's effective, and because of that, it's like they're sending a message saying, guys, we trust you not only for now, but also for later. And that's really the case with Peter Budaj. Some could say, well, you know what, last year he was shaky, he was battling with pucks a little bit. Well, this year he's been stellar. And when you got a guy that's ready to accept his role, that is not going to complain that he lacks ice time, that he doesn't start enough games, etc., and starts whining about it, he can become a distraction in the locker room, and it has happened in the past with the Montreal Canadiens. Budaj accepts his role. He's a great teammate. The guys love him, and he's been very effective on the ice. And the fact that he's got a goalie coach who's a full-time goalie coach, it makes a big difference compared to the time that he was in Colorado, where they only have a goalie consultant. So he seems that even though he's past 30 years old now, he still seems to be improving. So it bodes well. I think that Carey Price has got a good backup behind him.
This week, I believe the voting will begin for the Jacques Beauchamp Trophy for the team sports star. Do you have two or three players in mind that
I do
believe you win that that trophy?
Yeah, I do. Actually, you know what? Peter Budaj might be one of them. It might not be my first choice simply because of the number of games played, but in the shortened season where everybody thought that Price would start maybe 42, 43 games, Budaj started more games than we expected, and even he expected, and he raised to the challenge. So he's a bit of a unsung hero. But my personal favorite, the Jacques Beauchamp Trophy, so people can understand, is voted by the reporters that want to distinguish a player that maybe was a unsung hero, was not properly recognized in terms of the 3 stars. But the 3 stars are not voted by the reporters anymore; it's by the fans. So the style of voting has changed a lot in the last few years. And one thing that really has shown is that a guy like Tomas Plekanec has become really taken for granted. You know, his style of play is very reliable, very consistent, and yet he doesn't get the recognition at all for the importance that he has on this team. So even though he's a guy that's well paid, he's a name player on this team, the fact that he has gotten so taken for granted leads me to give him my vote for the Jacques Beauchamp Trophy. And Brendan Press would be also another guy to consider.
Yeah, for Tomas Plekanec, you're right. He's barely been part of the 3 stars this year, and yet he's one of the team's best forwards, if not the best forward. I agree with you absolutely. I noticed I noticed last night on your Twitter feed that you were at the Hamilton Bulldogs game.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, are there any players that you see there that you think might play a role on this team, maybe when the playoffs begin here, or that might fit in well in case of any injuries on the team?
Well, I think that I don't think so. It would be unfair to me to judge based on only one game, and one very, very bad game, probably the worst that this team has played in months. So it was not the type of game where any individual player could really stand out and show that he's ready for prime time. Even a guy like Jared Tenorio had a tough night last night. But right now, you've got in Montreal 3 forwards that are healthy scratches that are waiting in the wings. You obviously have Weber and Caberlet that are not playing. We know that the team is interested in Jared Tenorio. They will be. I don't think that they would hesitate to bring him back in Montreal if need be. But otherwise, I think that they're pretty much settled. That doesn't mean that once the Bulldogs are their season is over, they might not call up some guys to be part of that group that we call the Black Aces. I know that a guy like Louis Leblanc would hope to be one of the Black Aces. I don't know if he's going to be or not, but to guys that would be considered to help out and play a game in the playoffs, I really don't think so, because there's already enough guys that are healthy scratches as it is.
M.A. Godin is the Twitter handle. Marc-Antoine Godin, beat reporter from La Presse newspaper and La Presse.ca. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.